Hey there, high level enthusiasts. We are back with another one to our marketers, our SaaSpreneurs. You are going to love this. I'm JB, and you're tuned in to the podcast that's all about taking your high level to new heights. Each week, I bring in top industry experts who help me help you dive deep into the strategies that drive success specifically for high level users. Whether it's getting more customers, leveling up your knowledge, or supercharging your high level platform with everything you need. Today, I'm joined by Anthony Iannarino. You may or may not know him, but if you look him up on LinkedIn, there is a great amount of sales and positivity information that you could absorb. But we're not going to go on LinkedIn for this one. We're going to do it live. I want to say a little bit about Anthony. Anthony is an international speaker, best-selling author, entrepreneur, and sales leader specializing in complex B2B sales. And the reason why I brought Anthony on is because we are always trying to get more sales in our high-level community for our customers and for our customers' customers. So that being said, a little bit more about Anthony, Harvard Business School graduate, the creator of the Level 4 Value Creation and Building Consensus Methodologies. He's also a best-selling author of several influential sales books. You may have read a few of them. The Only Sales Guide You Ever Need, The Lost Art of Closing, Eat Their Lunch, Elite Sales Strategies, Leading Growth, and the latest one that we're going to be talking about today is the Negativity Fast. So buckle in. If you're tuning in live, let me know you're tuning in live right now. Comment below. Let's give Anthony a warm welcome because we're going to be talking about today this main episode that is called Proven Techniques to Increase Your Positivity, to Reduce Your Fear, and to Boost Success. And our episode is built in with 3 important bullet points that Anthony's going to go over. Identifying negativity in your agency, cultivating a positive mindset, and positivity and productivity that drives sales. Anthony, welcome to the show, man. It is great to have you. A little fist pound there, man.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Please let the audience know, if they don't know you or now they know you, a little bit about you, your story, and why sales.
Okay, I'll give you a little bit of a story. I grew up in an apartment complex, single mom, raising 4 kids, never had a bedroom of my own. We did the best that we could for as long as we could. And I decided that the best thing for me to do was to play rock and roll. So at 15, I started a rock and roll band. I played all over Ohio. I went out to Los Angeles by myself because I wanted to play music. While I was there, I had to get a job, and I worked in my family's staffing business. And it was really easy for me to get a job. I just walked into a couple staffing places. One said, "You'll have to come back later." I said, "Well, I probably won't. I'll already have a job." And I went to the next guy and he said, "The vice president's going to have to interview you before you can start." And I said, "I'll already have a job." And he goes, "No, I'm going to let you just go right through without that." While I was there, one day I walked up to my Brentwood apartment, and the interesting thing about this experience that I had is that when you have a grand mal seizure, you're the only one that doesn't know you had a seizure. But the people that saw me have the seizure were kind enough to get an ambulance to come and get me. I felt like I was being taken against my will. And I kept telling these people, "I know the laws in California. You have to let me out of here if I ask to go out." And I kept saying it over and over again. And then one of the guys, the paramedic, said, "You have no idea what you're talking about, but it is true. If you want to get out of here, you can just get out, but we don't want you to do that." Well, they cornered me in my apartment, and there was a big guy and a little guy. The big guy said, "Is it okay to use a bad word here?" Yeah, okay. He said, "Okay, listen, asshole, you had a seizure and we need to get you to the hospital." And at the same time, my neighbor walked in and he said, "If you don't want to go with them, I'll drive you to UCLA." So I got in a 1980 Chevy Chevette, and my neighbor took me to UCLA. They gave me an MRI and a CAT scan. and they told me that I had cancer on the right lobe of my brain. And me being who I am, we're going to have an argument about that. I said, well, how do we know it's cancer? And he said, there's only one other thing it could be. It could be an arterial venous malformation. So arteries and veins that grew into a big knot and it pushed on my brain. So I had to have two surgeries. One, they glued everything shut. So all those veins and arteries got glued together. And then the next day, I had an 11-hour surgery where they removed part of my right lobe. And after that, I was angry. I was not positive. I was positive my whole life, but after having my skull opened up, I was just really angry. Like angry enough, JB, that one time I was trying to get into a parking lot. A guy got in front of me, and I got out of the car, and I was going to be violent. Fortunately, nothing happened. But I changed after this, and I was very, very unhappy for a long time. It took me a while to get to this point where I realized this is not a good way to live. It's just not a good way to live this life. So I worked really, really hard for a long time to try to figure out how to get rid of this negativity. And I would tell you, I went to college right after that. I got summa cum laude, graduated. I got the full ride for law school, and then I went to Harvard Business School all in a row. And at that time, I was still very angry. But at some point in my life, I realized I want to get myself rid of all of this negativity and all this like fear that a lot of your negativity is just fear. I'm afraid this isn't going to go the way I want and these sort of things. So what I decided to do one day was I'm going to remove every negative force in my life, people, my own thinking, what I was reading, what I was watching on TV. I haven't watched news television since 1996. I've not just, I turned it off. It stayed off. All the politics went away. Everything just started to do this. So what I did is I promised myself I'll do 30 days where I will not have any negative, nothing negative in my life. Like if the person's negative, I'm not going to be around them. And I felt a little bit better after 30 days. I decided I should probably do another 30 days. And then the next 30 days, I felt even better because I was just not taking in anything negative. It's a really good thing to do is just try to get rid of that. I got to the third 30-day time and I realized something. I was getting rid of the negativity, but I wasn't putting in anything positive. And I realized that that's a mistake. So I started listening to Anthony Robbins, Stephen Covey, Brian Tracy, Les Brown, Zig Ziglar, anybody who was just positive. If it was positive, I'm taking it in. That's all I'm taking in is positivity, 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 no negativity. And I started to feel a lot better. And from that period, I've still been on my negativity fast. I just have no interest in trying to, let me just say it this way. Negativity is a poison that you ingest. And the more you ingest, like right now, we're going into a presidential election. Everybody's going to be unhappy. And only one of these two groups is going to get the president that they want because that's the way it normally goes. But people are going to be angry. You can't be angry over these things because you have no way to do anything about it. But what you can do is you can start removing these negative forces. And the more you can remove those negative forces, the better you're going to feel. And people will notice it around you very quickly. I'm very centered. Like I'm very centered now. Not a lot of things get me wound up at all. Like mostly I can just let it go. And I'm much happier that way. So I know that you probably want to watch all these things on TV. You want to be aware of the news. And when I tell people I only read The Economist and anything else that's not divisive because I'm not going to be a part of that. And when people say, well, how do you know what's going on? All the negative people tell me what's going on. They're going to make sure you know that something negative is happening. I don't have to do anything because you're going to tell me. And I'm not really interested. If I can't do anything about it, I can't do anything about it. But I can do something about what's in here and what's in here. I can take care of those two things. And that seems to be just about enough.
Amen. And there's so much to, I mean, the everything you just said could be its own episode, right? And I want to be thoughtful of our audience's time, your time, and this is a great conversation starter to have for yourself, right? If you're tuned in right now and you just heard what you heard, like really jot one or two things down that you listened to and just leave it to the side. Put it on a piece of scrap paper, leave it to the side, and ask yourself that question later. And that'll start to get your mind processing it. But you said something here towards the end of, don't worry about not knowing it for yourself. The negative people will tell you. So essentially, as I unpack that for my personal self, I'm like, so what Anthony's trying to tell me is that there's no need to take a double dosage of negativity. You're going to get one dosage whether you look for it or not. Let that be the dosage.
That's true. And you
And,
probably, if you're listening to this, you probably know the person that's going to tell you.
these are things that like, right, it's like everyday common sense or everyday assumption. But, as you really start to like look at it from outside looking in of your own self, you start to see those that bring the positive energy, positive news, and then the negative energy, negative news. And sometimes we do it on purpose, or sometimes we do it without even recognizing it. And, Anthony, you've had a wide experience in your career before sales, and then you went into sales and sales training, and you've worked with and you've collaborated with some amazing sales professionals. And you're primarily on LinkedIn. Your home, your social media preference of choice is LinkedIn, and
Yeah.
you're in a bunch of those conversations. And with what you've experienced, how does, because our audience are marketers, agency owners, those that are getting into the new software as a service model. How does negativity and what you shared correlate with sales and running a marketing business?
So I have a number of things to say about this. So one of the things that you have to think about as a person that's doing something that is, let's say, if it's selling, if it's marketing, you have to have the right headspace to do this kind of work. So that's the first thing that I would say. If you're not positive, if you're a leader, if you have your own company, like you can have a day off, but you can't have an off day. Like your people are looking for you as the leader to set the standard for how we take these things in. So we lost a client. Okay, well, that's going to happen. You can't be negative about it. What you have to do is replace that one or go back after them, figure out how you need to change for them. But you have to always be positive that there's still something that I can do. I can still make it better. I can still get this client back, or I could replace them. But when people start to get this downward spiral, like we lost our biggest client, I can just tell you this one time happened to me. My family's business was doing $38 million. We lost our largest client. We always lost 3 million every year, and then we lost 7 million. I was down $10 million. I replaced the $10 million over the next year because we mostly chase big clients. As soon as I got that done, I lost the second largest client I had. And I'm thinking the gods of sales are not happy with me for some reason. I'm a good salesperson. I'm taking care of people, but for some reason, I just got that. And then I had 3 million there on top of six. That's 9 million. And all I did was we just have to go back and do all the things that we need to do. We have to be positive. We have to know that there are people that still need our help. And we're going to have to go out and be as positive as we can and go and do the work that we do to help people get the results that they want. And you have to just have this in your mind. I'm going to say this one more time. You can take a day off as a leader, but you can't have an off day. Your team needs you to lead them, and you want high standards of how people believe and what they think about and the work that they do. And that's the most important thing for a leader to do if you want to make sure that you have a team that's positive. If you're not positive, they're not positive.
Go ahead and type in the chat below exactly what Anthony had shared. You can take a day off, but you can't have an off day. Go ahead and type that in the chat below there. It's important that if there's a nugget or there's something that really hit home for you, please comment it below. With our audience that's tuning in, it's almost like sharing notes. It's almost like sharing perspective. And although you can't talk to Anthony directly, voice to voice, you're not in the actual live here with us. He's watching the comments. He's going to communicate with you some way, shape, or form. So please go ahead and throw your questions, throw your feedback and your nuggets there. Anthony, you've had a career of working with small sales organizations, evolving into medium enterprise. You've hosted private events and trainings, and you've also been part of and have your own stages that you've been on, whether it's as a keynote or as a supporting featured speaker. Out of all the salespeople that you've spoken to in your career, I'm sure a handful come up to you during, after, or thereafter the training or the event's done, and they ask you, or they you give them some advice. What could you share with us with your experience with sales professionals on how they stay positive? I mean, like, staying positive sounds great, but like, what are some action items? What are some things that our audience can grab from you that to consider incorporating in their personal life?
I'm gonna give you a couple things, okay?
Okay.
So the first thing, what you say to yourself in your head is the first thing that you have to get control over. And I'll tell you my story. I'm in Chicago at O'Hare. There's no plane waiting for me, and I want to get home. And I start to talk to myself like, there's no plane. I'm going to be late. I'm not going to get the sleep that I need to be good tomorrow. And I start telling myself that because that's what comes up. Then I call my wife and I say, I'm going to be late. She doesn't care. It doesn't matter what time to her. But so I'm calling her that. And then I said, I just want to get home. And I just want to get home. And then she says, well, if you're going to be there for 2 hours, what would you do if you had 2 hours free to yourself? And I said, I would either write a book or I would read a book. And she said, go get a book. And I said, okay, I'll go get a book. And it was just that fast for me to feel better. So what you tell yourself, you have to go back against this. So you've got this little voice in there that tells you that to be negative. One of the things it says to me when I'm stuck in an airport is like, why don't you go get a big bag of peanut butter M&Ms? And I'm like, that's the worst thing I could possibly do. That can't happen. I'll be sick for days after doing something like that. So the second thing that I would tell you is I have a brother who's a comedian, and he travels driving like from Ohio to Florida and then to Hawaii, all kinds of places. He just goes. Right now, he's in Thailand doing comedy. But one day he told me about a story. A guy was trying to swerve in front of him while they were driving through Florida, where that's the worst drivers everywhere. So just so you know, if you're in Florida, I apologize, but this is true. Well, the guy was trying to get in front of him, and he looked over at the guy's face, and he thought, this guy is too far away from a rest stop. And I said, well, how did you know that? And he goes, because I could look on his face, because this happens to me all the time. I'm too far away from the rest stop. And he said, I just told the guy, I rolled down the window and I said, go, get in front of me. And I thought, he has no idea if the guy's got a small bladder. We don't know that. There's no way to know that. And he let the guy go. And now he just lets everybody go. Like, instead of worrying about it. And I thought, like, this is empathy. Like, even if the guy doesn't really need to get to a bathroom, he pretends like they do, and he just lets everybody go. And he's a lot happier. He's not angry anymore about the way people drive. You can do that same thing. So you're at the grocery store. There's a person there, they're taking too long. They have some sort of problem, and you're getting triggered by that. That's not about them. That's about how you're perceiving this. You could have empathy and say, this person is talking to this person because they are lonely. And what if you're wrong about that? So what? Let them go for a minute. Whatever happened has to happen would make you more positive than negative. So these are just very practical things. So in this book, everything's been cited. Everything here, you'll be able to find the science on it if you are looking for this. But I'll give you a couple other things that you need to know if you want to feel a lot better. And I'm going to scare you with this one because I want you to be afraid of this one. If you are a constant complainer, and I was world class, I would have probably 8 gold rings on me like a Olympic person as a complainer. I don't complain at all. And I'm going to tell you why. If you complain, your hippocampus, where your memory lives and your thinking lives, shrinks. It literally shrinks. So you can look for this paper from Stanford. You do not want to complain. And if you complain, the more you complain, the more you do damage for a whole part of your body. First, you'll be more negative. You'll have greater inflammation, better odds of having a heart incident. You will have less, your relationships won't be anywhere near as well. All of these things are bad if you're a complainer. So instead of complaining, you just have to figure out what are we going to do and then do something about it because that's really all you can do. And I'll give you one more strategy that's really, really important. It's one of my favorites. So if you are the kind of person that has a gratitude journal and you get up in the morning and you do that, you should stop doing that because there's a better way to do this. The best way to do this is something called 3 blessings, and it's from Marty Seligman he's the guy that created positive psychology. It was always negative psychology before Seligman. And what he did, he took 3 million people and he asked them to do this. Before you go to bed at night, you write down 3 things that went well for you today and why they went well for you. And so put that in your journal and keep doing that every night, over and over again. 3 things that went well for me today. At the end of a month or 2 months, you're going to look back at and think to yourself, my life is really good. Like good things happen to me every single day. Things go well for me. And you will have a change that we don't know how long it lasts. So when he did this, if people did this for 2 weeks, 6 months later, they didn't have their depression and they weren't negative anymore. So this is something that you can do very, very easily. And I like the idea of doing it in the morning because I'm a morning guy. But at night is where you've already had all the experiences of the day. So you have enough things that you could write down. If you do this, you will feel better. And I've already done this with a whole bunch of people through the negativity fast.
And Anthony, you know me by now. I'm a happy-go-lucky, positive, rah-rah guy. I enjoy it. I enjoy bringing the smiles out of people. I enjoy having fun. But, it wasn't always like that. And it's not always like that, right? And sometimes they say the more happier, the more pumped, the more excited you are, maybe the more you're dealing with or the more you're pushing away and you're making better and you just use the positivity to scare it away, right? But learning and hearing what you're saying to me, it starts to make more sense. My self-talk before was a lot of what was around me, whether it was the music I was listening to, the crowd I was with, or the toughness or whatever the case that crowd was, the gossip crowd or whatever, as an example. And then, my self-talk was just kind of keeping consistently what I heard or see and like think about it, right? This self-talk happens without you realizing it. It's like you said, a little voice in your brain just starts talking to you from what the gut and heart wants it to do. And as I started to be in front of a lot of good people that had a different approach to life and a different style, I started to shift, like you had mentioned in yours.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference because your positive self-talk wants you to, like you said, organically help others. You have this empathy that comes out. You're holding the door for random people. You're letting people, everything that you said, I was like, the aha moment. And then, when it comes to complaining, like I was a complainer. I'd be the first to complain. I was petty. I am still a little petty. I complain a little bit, but not as much as I ever did before. And again, it's because the people changed. But my complaining now is a little bit more strategic. It's like, you know, taking a hypothesis and looking at the bad parts and how do we make it better, right? Like that constructive complaining, but it's controlled, where some people just complain about everything, the color, this, that. It's a lot. And, I look back and I say, if I would have had a little bit of these principles more tighter, more in control, more aware of them, would I be somewhere else or somewhere faster than where I'm at now and where I want to be? With that, what if somebody starts to consume this and understand this and really delve into it? The feeling they may receive is, man, I messed up. I ran out of time.
No,
Or
no, no,
is there a
no.
chance to like what could someone do? If you start to like the bells and the whistles go off, like, all right, adjustment. Is this a fresh restart? Or like how do you pivot the cruise ship in the ocean, without hitting into anything?
I think the way that you're thinking about this is that you have some sort of a time machine that you could go back and start over. I'd love to do that because I would want to be like 13 and I'd want somebody to come and say, you know what you should do? You should start a hedge fund. That's what I wish somebody would have told me, but I didn't know anything about money then because I didn't have any money. But you just have to start where you are. Like there, don't worry about the past. You can't do anything about the past except let it go. You just have to let it go and say, I made a lot of mistakes. And one of those things that you get from making those mistakes is experience and wisdom. That's how you learn these things. And now like if I could do it over, I wouldn't have been negative because I didn't know that it was this difficult for us and it was so harmful. But now you know. And so now you have new information, and new information means you can make new choices. And if you can make new choices, then you can change your life dramatically. I went from being very negative to being very positive, and I'm much happier for it. And everything around me is mostly positive.
And I appreciate you sharing that, and you obviously, being super transparent about what you went through and sharing your story. I think, that's where people feel the disconnect, right? Like there's always a whole bunch of advice and a whole bunch of strategies and a whole bunch of you should, woulda, coulda, do it now, but there's no connection to why should I listen to you and do it because of your inspiration or your example. But you've really laid a lot of that down, your why and the reason why you do what you do and why you've pivoted. I mean, it's a big pivot to go from heavy sales driven content to now a hybrid of sales, positive, negative mindset, adjustment, lifestyle. Because we talked about this briefly, times are changing. They've already changed, but they continue to change. But I want to hold that thought to the side. I want to bring this a little bit more hyper focus for our agency owners, our marketers. Our audience is running a marketing agency. They have I'll frame it for you. Maybe they have a few virtual assistants that are out of the country or in the country. Maybe they have a few local employees or some helpers, right? Maybe they have themselves and three others or themselves and 30 others, right? How does either or any of them identify negativity in their agency because they have human beings working for them? How do they identify and how do they manage it in a respectful manner?
Depends on what it is. Now, if somebody's really suffering, now you have a different sort of situation. So that you're going to have some sort of an intervention to try to figure out like what's going on in their world. And that's also another way of, I like empathy, but it's not my favorite thing. So empathy is walking a mile in somebody else's shoes, but compassion is recognizing that their shoes don't fit them and going out and buying them a pair of shoes that fit. So it's not just being empathetic and saying, I understand what that person's going through. Do something about it. So that might mean you have to do something to help this person to recognize how negative they are, because negative people don't think they are. They'll tell you, like I'm just a realist. No, you're negative. And if you weren't, I would know because you would be more positive, and they're not. So if you have a team, you have to be paying attention to what they believe and what you want to do with them. I'm going to tell you what as a leader, what I do. I have everybody doing what I want them to do as it comes to how we do things. So I came out of temporary staffing. That's what I did for many, many years. Every person that I sent to a client falls off within a week or 2 weeks. Every single thing we did every single day was ripped out, and we had to start over all the time. And some people couldn't handle that, but that's how it goes. And I just learned to say to my clients something like, I'm going to make sure we give you the very best unreliable people we can find. And they would laugh because they know like they're going to have these people. And if they were ever grouchy about it, I would be like, we're not calling them full time. We're calling them temporary. They're not going to be here that long, right? And people would do what you're doing. They're like, that's funny. And I want to change their state, right? And I can change their state, and you can change your team's state, and you can tell them like, while you're here, we're going to be positive people. Now, I can't stop somebody from doing something that would be bad for them when they get home, but I can say here, we don't think anything about this. If every day the same thing happens, what are you going to do about it? That's how it works. So you just have to be positive. And the more positive you are, the more you solve those problems that you have anyway. So I would tell you, look for the signs that people are negative. And if they are negative, I would say that's a very good place to start coaching. This would help you. And it's helped a whole bunch of people. A whole bunch of people that were political have all sent me notes on LinkedIn saying, I'm post political now. I'm post political. I don't have much to say about this. There's going to be an election. Somebody's going to win it. And then 4 years later, we'll get another one, right?
Yeah. It's Anthony, you ever like, you know, you're a student of the game, right? You're a student of the game of life. You have obviously a life out of your work and your professional career. But, how do you feel when you hear someone say something that aligns with you so well? How does it make you feel?
When something aligns with what I believe,
Yeah, like
yeah,
when someone like with what you're hearing, let's say, whether it's a speaker or whether just a conversation, it just aligns with you. How
yeah,
do you feel about that?
I feel good about it. I,
Because
I'm
go ahead.
it's important that if you want to do good work in this world, like you have to be positive. You have to. It's important that you do that.
How do
And
you go about controlling your excitement when you hear something that aligns with you super? You're like, man, it clicked for this person, but you don't want to throw your arms up and look overzealous and excited and throw them off. How do you kind of control that exciting energy? Do you say something to yourself? Do you just without putting the poker face on, right? You don't want to look like you're sleeping on them here, but
yeah, I'll tell you a quick story. I was working with a very large client. I'm training 1,200 people or something like that. And there's a senior leader there. And I said, okay, so I'm going to be a, I'm going to be your sales rep. And I come in and I say, I just got a meeting with this giant client that we've been chasing for years. What do you say? And he said, thank you for doing your job. And I said, that's it? That's how you celebrate? This is a multi-million dollar opportunity. And you said, thank you for doing your job. And he said, well, what would you do? And now he's a big, tall guy. And I grabbed him and I said, this is amazing. Like, look at this. We're going to have this meeting. I said, how do you feel about this? And he's like, he's breathing. He's trying to breathe. And I'm like, try it again. And then he grabbed me and hugged me. And I'm like, you got to give these people your emotions, man. You've got to help them understand that when they do something that's this incredible, that it means something. And if it doesn't mean anything for you, then it's just another day at the office. You're not going to get the best results out of people. And then he started to do that. After I did that, he started to feel way different about how we celebrate good things instead of just going to work every day.
Yeah, and I've experienced this. I've worked. I've been blessed to work, in small family-owned businesses, evolve into corporate, public traded business, evolve into privately, VC-funded businesses, and then going to the startup and all these other different experiences. Then having my own agency for some time, and I feel it's a blessing because I got to see the different types of people that I got to either work with directly, whether they were my supervisor, my manager, my director, my VP, or their leader. And I always noticed that there was this poker face approach, and then this happy-go-lucky where it was like a game. It was like, all right, we're gonna do a pep rally, and we'll go all rah rah, and then we're gonna position the boss to be the bad guy or the bad girl, and drop the hammer down, and that'll bring us back up to where it was just like this whole psychological game. And it's like, as a frontline sales professional executive, you're like, what the heck do I do? Like, what? There's no clues. And I think that's what we were speaking about earlier offline, was like, where are the clues, and how do we make the clues available for people to at least take some of the clues to build their own opinion, excitement, and pathway? And I asked you, like, how do you take a response, and how do you feel when someone gets it with you? Because what you exactly shared is what sometimes agency owners are doing. Because they're in business mode, they're just like in business mode. It's like, that's your job, that's what I pay you for. And that's crazy because, like you said, these are people that are working their behinds off to get the result that they believe you want or the company needs. And what you just kind of shared in the example is something that, whether you're small, medium, or large, I think the biggest takeaway is show appreciation and show excitement around if it's something that's going to hit the bottom line of the business. It's going to drive business. It can make them better as a person in your business. So for someone that maybe doesn't have that happy-go-lucky, or doesn't have that openness of sharing the emotion, doesn't have that appetite for really dropping down their guard, how could they start to build that positive self-talk mindset and then implement it little by little to their team or to their contractors or to those that are important to their business?
Yeah, I think it's very important that you try to make sure that everybody is positive as much as they can be. Now, there's going to be people that have, let's say, events, and the event could cause somebody to be negative, and they probably should be. So I'm not saying you can never be negative. Like, if something negative happens, it's a negative thing, and you're going to feel negative about it because you should, right? But then you have to go back to say, how am I going to do something to make this better? I also think about when I think about salespeople, one of the things, like probably the number one question I get is, how do you deal with rejection? And I'm thinking, like, why do you think you were rejected? They rejected the meeting. They didn't reject you. They didn't say, JB, I'd buy from anybody except you. And now that would be real rejection, right? I had a girlfriend when I was 17, and she said, I'm breaking up with you, and I want you to know why. I didn't really need to know why, but she had to tell me anyway. She said, you're a loser, and you're always going to be a loser. My mom thinks you're a loser. My sisters think you are a loser. And I said, okay, I get it. Uh, and before this is a true story. Before she left Earth, she called me and apologized to me. That was one of the last things she did. She said, you weren't a loser. And that was a nice thing to get back. But this is about people. Now, we're in this world of AI now, and now
Mm-hmm.
everything is technological.
Mm-hmm.
What you have to do as a human being is spend more time around your people and doing the work to make them positive, to helping them grow. If you're a leader, your job is to get the full potential out of everybody on your team as fast as you can, and to grow them as fast as you possibly can. That's what you're charged with doing. And
Amen. And
this is part of it.
And to that point, I want to, you charged me up on this because, right, sales cures all business problems if done right, right? So,
Right.
a handful of our marketers that white label high level, that they sell it. There's some that are beginners, some that are really, I mean, it's amazing what they do. But, it really comes down to, if depending on the size of your business, you have to do different things. Positivity, right? We talk self-talk positive as a leader. You mentioned you have to bring the best out of people, right? Right. And then you mentioned with AI, like AI can help them, but you got to add the human expertise, the human guidance, the human approach that your business demands for your customers. So with that being said, as we took all this information that you shared, and your book has, you mentioned to me that your book has, all citations in there, practical things you could do, additional context to get the brain flowing to make this more personal to you. This isn't a book about you or sales or things that you should do. It's a book about things that have been done and scientifically supported or medically supported to help you make it yours to help your life. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so that's the resource there, right? The resource is only good as implementation. So as our agency owners and our marketers are starting to put this together, what what could they expect, right? As broad, or as, we have a big audience here, but what could they expect if they start to implement positivity, self-talk, positive culture in their company? They're emphasizing their core values. They're emphasizing their team mission. They're emphasizing their collaboration with each other. They're emphasizing the importance of communicating with the clients and making the clients feel that way, like we make the employees feel. How does this all make a difference, and how do you start to like track and measure it, or at least pinpoint the success or the progress?
If you are the leader, then you're responsible for figuring out how you're going to keep yourself centered and positive at the beginning of this. As you start to work with your team, I would tell you it's very important to understand what's going on in their lives, and I always want to start with like what's going on in their life, because sometimes they're negative because they have something that's really difficult for them and they're fearful. Most of this is fear. A lot of it is anyway. And then I think you should start coaching with people. But the first question that I ask as a coach, my first question is always, what's showing up in your world right now? I just need to know that. I'm not going to go, hey, we're going to be all positive right now if somebody's having a very bad time of it right now. So I think you have to look at that and see where are they right now, and then how do we help them? You are responsible for your team, and they're responsible also to you for trying to be as positive as they can and to do the best work that they possibly can. So we have these relationships with each other, and I think that that's the most important thing for anyone. Like if you want better relationships, being positive will give you better relationships. It will also, if you're positive, you will have less inflammation. Your immune system will be way better. You'll have better relationships with people. You'll have lower blood pressure. I can go all, I mean, when I studied gratitude, I was like, nobody's going to believe this. Like the list
uh,
of things that gratitude does is so long. You're like, this can't be true. There's
I
too
know,
many things.
I
And
know
and
exactly how you feel.
and you see that and you go like, that's too many things. Turns out it's all those things. Everything is better for you.
Yeah, and so people, right, what you just shared right now, for someone that hasn't had the opportunity or the experience of being in a corporate environment where it's all really organized and structured with HR rules and regulations and SOPs, from supervisor to director to VP roles and all that. Let's talk a little bit about the one-to-one, right? The implementation of this, getting to know somebody. Could you give us in a Spark note, short format, on how someone could start the one-to-one conversation without being too direct or intrusive?
Yeah. That's my first question is like, what's showing up in your world? Now, if you tell me I'm having trouble with my spouse, We have a kid that's sick right now. We don't have the money, like other things. Then we're going to have a different conversation. And if they're saying like, well, I'm really trying to grow here, then that's a different conversation. You have to go to the person where they are right now. If you want to be a good coach, you want to start where they are right now. Wherever they are, that's where we pick them up.
Mhm.
It's like golf. The ball's there, that's where you play it. And
Mhm.
you don't get to determine uh, how somebody is negative or how they're positive. It just shows up that way in your world. And your job is to have the conversation to let them make some progress forward. That's what we try to do with coaching, is get them
When you've
moving in the right direction.
And when you've coached, different levels and different companies and different organizations, what is like the sweet spot or maybe a best practice or some advice around how often you should be coaching or meeting one to one versus, because we're obviously not going to ask these questions in a public setting, right? If you're new to this
Yeah.
whole concept of running your business, you definitely don't want to, unpeel the onion and people's personal lives in a room full of people, right? That's just making sure there's no confusion about that. The one to one, how often do we do this? And is there something that you've seen or you've coached a new manager on how they should kind of progress into it?
There's a couple of variables that we have to talk about. So it depends
Hmm.
on how many people on a team. So
Hmm.
if you have 10, that's a lot of people. So you're probably going to have to do it bi-weekly or something like that, because you're not going to be able to do this 10 one-to-ones every single week. That's too much. And as you have some people who are just getting better and better as you go, you might have to do that maybe just once a month with them because they're already in good shape. So you have to take care of your time and their time at the same time. So we have to worry about what are we spending our time on. I think one-to-one coaching is very important. And I think if you did it every 2 weeks, that'd be probably enough for most people. And unless you have somebody who's got a real problem, and then you might have to do a little bit more.
Yeah. So, if as you're tuning in here, everybody, just make sure you're carving in, if you have not yet, at least bi-weekly one to one. Whether, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of personally like recording it or taking like personal notes, but try to do your best to at least grab a few nuggets that you can take along with you to pick up where you last left off. It's always awkward when you're telling someone your life and they're taking notes and it's like, what are they going to do with this? Or the thing is recording, or there's like one of those AI transcribers. So make sure that someone feels comfortable. Make sure your person, your employee, or your staff, or your VA, whoever you're working with, feels comfortable and safe, because that's important as human beings. And then obviously, doing some more research and understanding the the art of one to one and human connection and business development, personal development is all important too. And if you haven't yet, you gotta find Anthony Iannarino on LinkedIn. He puts a bunch of content out there about different topics. Feel free to connect with him. He's obviously super relatable, humble, and he doesn't go Hollywood on you. The guy's all about the profession and the people within it. So you can expect a response back if you do reach out to him. Anthony, as we're wrapping this up here, and I'm very grateful that you really just unpack this in a digestible way where it's not just statistics and cloud and I've done this or I've done that. It's more of just, look, in my years of experience, some storytelling and just really authentic and cool, calm, collective. Thank you for that. I want to really, I want to pick your brain on this for the remaining few minutes, because I think it's important that our agency owners, our marketers, or those that are getting ready to embark on entrepreneurship understand the outlook of what's happening in the next 5 years when it comes to mindset and sales, and either the connection or the gap.
Yeah.
Could you share a little bit of with your opinion, your experience, the decades that you've been able to witness evolve? Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. What I would tell you right now in sales, um, right now, what you have to be aware of is that there are close to 80 million baby boomers, 78.8, and they're all by 2030, they're all going to be out of the workforce. So this is the largest generation we have. The next largest is the millennials, and then they're not having babies. And Gen Z, I have three Gen Z children. One will have babies, the other two probably will not. And we're at the lowest birth rate we've had for as long as anybody can see. Not just us, but Italy doesn't have any babies. Germany has no babies. They're bringing in migrants because they can't fill their jobs. So what you should expect in the future is that there will be less demand because we're losing this giant group of people. My mom, my dad are baby boomers. So that will mean less demand. So what I'm going to tell you, as a sales organization, as somebody that's running an agency, what you have to see is that you have to get incredibly effective compared to your competitors, because there's too many of you already, and there have been for a long time. And when you see SaaS on their shirt, then you're looking exactly at having way too many people selling the same thing. And that's going to continue until it doesn't. I already see some lessening of some SaaS stuff, right? Because there's too much duplication on those things. So I would tell you the most important thing is to build the best team you can. And while you're doing that is just helping everybody on your team grow and to be positive. And you want to be the most effective sales organization in your industry. That's what you should be focused on. The people who are really good at what they do will always dominate. So that's what you should be working on. And being positive is a wonderful way to start thinking about how you do this.
I'd stay here all day with you, Anthony. We'd have a picnic. We'd have a blast. We could do this as like a marathon. But I'm very grateful for your time. And to our audience, thank you for just engaging with us, like just going all in, right? Putting yourself in a little bit of a vulnerable state, like dropping your guard, listening, right? Taking notes, making sure you start to see, I might be off on this, or, this gentleman, maybe sharing something that resonates with me, or I've been told this before, or I've told others before. So please share your nuggets below, whether it's on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just share what your takeaway was below. In the description on our YouTube page, we're going to upload this. We're going to add the blog that we're going to have of Anthony on there. We're going to include a bunch of his information, his links, how to get in touch with him. Go ahead and head over to the YouTube, search Anthony Iannarino, go high level, and you should find him in our podcast playlist. Anthony, man, thank you. Thank you for just giving us your all, man. Just really, on the spot, on demand, taking the questions and just unpacking them in a layman, digestible, human way. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here, and we'll have to do it again another time, huh?
We will. Fist pound to that. You guys heard it, saw it, seen it. Have a great one. Thank you for joining us. If you're not yet a high-level customer, click the link below. Get your free trial, courtesy of Anthony. Until next time, we got more fire coming your way. We'll see you soon. Bye now.